Welcome to the city of Philadelphia. My name is Tristen Thompson. I am 18 years old, black, and living in America. And like many other black youth in Philadelphia, I have learned how hard it is to make it in the city of brotherly love. Here's a look into my life and a chance to hear some of our stories.
Come on, Trent, it's time to get up. Too big.
Let's take the sheet off.
This is what it looks like.
Welcome to Route 36, service to Center City.
Every day, I wake up before the sun to catch the bus to school. The 108 is the first bus in a sometimes 3-bus voyage to school from the southwest region of Philadelphia where I live to the suburbs of Bryn Mawr where I go to school. If I miss the 627 bus, I miss all of my other buses, subsequently catalyzing the chain reaction for a less than satisfactory morning. I like how the sun wakes everything up, but the view is not exactly pleasant. Maybe things were better in the dark. The sun makes the trees look like they're shining, but even the sun can't make the heavily littered Philadelphia streets glitter like gold. The 2-hour trip is more than a ride to school. It's a look at the life I have, and a glimpse of the life that I could have. As I watch the houses get larger and further apart, and the cars get shinier and more expensive, I wake up from my groggy morning daze and remember where I am and where I'm going. And I can't help thinking about how I got here. I live in southwest Philadelphia. I haven't always lived here. I moved here 3 years ago, after I got evicted from a home of 10 years in West Philadelphia. My mom said we had to move because of gentrification. At first I didn't believe her, but now I realize she was right. There used to be a bunch of brown-skinned, curly-haired kids trying to run into the horizon, or at least to the corner of the block, because that's as far as their mothers would let them go. But now, the blocks are filled with posh cafes and other attractions to appeal to the college student and recent graduates moving in. But that's another point for another time, because that's not where I live now, and this is where I'm going. For 8 hours a day, I forget that I live on a noisy block behind a bar in a crowded row home, because all I can see is a beautiful historic building on a beautiful green campus. I forget about my creaky wooden floors because at school I walk through carpeted hallways. And I don't remember what I have to go back home to until it's 2:40 and I'm rushing to grab my things so I don't miss the 3 o'clock bus as my friends' keys to their own cars jingle in their hands as we say goodbye. I never forget who I am or where I'm going because every day I'm reminded of what I come from and what I can have if I work hard enough. But this fight is more than just a 2-hour trip to school and an 8-hour day of vigorous academics. This fight is about defining myself as a young black woman in a predominantly white world, and I am not the only one fighting.
She's like a researcher, and she was watching 16 and Pregnant and she was a white girl.
This is my
She was
friend
16.
Marla.
She had a baby.
She goes to Baldwin
She was like
too.
talking to the little
She lives
baby.
in Chester.
She was talking to the
Not one
baby in
of
the
the best
car,
neighborhoods in the
and
greater
she's like,
Philadelphia
"Mommy's
area.
gonna drop you off at
She knew there was more opportunity at a better school, so now she's going to Baldwin
and then
instead of
after
Chester
that,
High,
you know,
the
I'm
public
gonna
high
go to work
school
for
she
8
would have
hours, and then I'm
zoned
gonna come back and get
She's
you.
trying
How do
to
you feel
change her
about
life
that?" And then
with
black kids
education.
just be like, "Her black mom."
Marlana is an active member of PYPM, the Philadelphia Youth Poetry Movement. This weekend, she's going to perform at a poetry slam.
Writing is a creative outlet for me. So PYPM kind of cultivated that. I'd never written any poetry before I went to PYPM. I started it and then I realized that like, hey, I'm not that bad. And then my first year, I made it to finals, but like skinned my teeth, like almost. Like I made it to finals, but like barely. Final slam.
He won't let me through the doors of his church. He has left me. There's no place to redeem myself. He's a sick God, a fractured spirit, a distant soul being carried along by the softest of whispers and the loudest of groans. Darling, here's a losing game.
On deck, we got Girls High. Coming to the stage, give it up for Baldwin.
Soak, wash, rinse, repeat. Soak, wash, rinse, repeat. Hate is like the never-ending cycle of washing clothes. A wash cycle starts with soiling clothes, while hate starts with soiling people. Hate soils people, like little Native American children soiled their underwear after being beaten with Bibles for singing tribal songs in Catholic reform schools, where nuns wiped trails of tears from soiled baby cheeks since 1900, and where nuns wiped the trail of tears from soiled traumatized brains since 1831. Hate soils people, like Nazi soldiers soiled starch green uniforms by pinning blood red swastikas to ice cold hearts, by breaking down synagogue doors and pinning black guns to pink gums, and by staining stained glass windows red with the blood of God's chosen people. After soiling comes separation. Separating the colors makes each group more manageable. If house slaves were separated from field slaves, then they couldn't separate themselves from the master. If Tutsis were separated from Hutus, then they couldn't separate themselves from forced European imperialism. If Dominicans were separated from Puerto Ricans, then they can't separate themselves from European monopolization of their natural resources. If white Negroes are separated from dark Negroes, then we can't separate ourselves from white supremacy. You see, separating the colors makes each group more manageable. After soiling and separation comes the actual wash cycle. Soak, wash, rinse, repeat. Soak, wash, rinse, repeat. Native American blood soaked European hands in amber grasslands since 1492. They used guns and knives to wash away indigenous culture and traditions. Rinse away the evidence of repression by taking Native babies from their mothers and by sending them to Catholic boarding schools. Repeat. Soak. African blood soaked European hands in Atlantic shoreline sands after the Middle Passage since the 1500s. Wash. They used whips and chains to wash away African culture, language, identity. Rinse away the very pride of the people who built this country by incarcerating them and turning them against each other. Soak. Asian blood soaked European hands in snowy mountain lands as poor Asian immigrants sold their souls for pennies in 1865. Wash. Used atomic bombs and internment camps to wash away innocent communities of Japanese women and children. Rinse away feelings of guilt by giving Japanese Americans meager reparations to compensate for lives destroyed. Repeat, because the cycle of hate never seems to stop. Hate is like the never-ending cycle of washing clothes. But clothing doesn't last forever, and neither do people. If you wash your favorite red sweater too much, it will eventually get a hole in it like Trayvon Martin's heart. And if you leave your lucky jeans in the dryer for too long, they will eventually burst at the seams like inner-city public schools. And if you overwash your winter coat, its zipper will get locked up like Black and Latino males. Cotton and polyester can only take so much wear and tear. Human bodies and souls must be handled with care. So God forbid that hate is like the never-ending cycle of washing clothing. Because unlike clothing, human beings are not replaceable.
My name is Greg Corbin. I'm the founder and the executive director of the Philadelphia Youth Poetry Movement, otherwise known as PYPM. Started back in 2006. The reason why I started PYPM is because young people needed a safe space where they can be creative, where they can express themselves, where they can build relationships with other young people from around the city. Our solution to make sure our young people have a voice, have a representation for their generation. They are the future, so we have to give them the tools and the ammunition so that they can construct a better world for us all. If we do not invest in the young people, we will not be investing in ourselves. It's common sense. So,
sexual misconduct.
This is Kevin. He's a 19-year-old young black man who also lives in Southwest Philadelphia. Like Marlana, Kevin is also an active member of the Philadelphia Youth Poetry Movement. Kevin goes to public school at Martin Luther King High School in North Philadelphia, but before that he went to a private Quaker school in Wynwood named Friends Central. Kevin left because of social issues he continued to encounter. So the American dream used to be that you would come to this country, you would make money, you would start a family, you would buy a nice big house with a white picket fence and have 2.5 kids, and that was the way life was supposed to go. But the American dream is evolving, and now it's turned into you go to school, you get a good education, you get into a good college or university, you get a good job, you start a career, and then you buy your big house and your white picket fence and have your 2.5 kids. I don't want to generalize. I want to avoid generalizing because there are African American people who can definitely afford these things, and there are plenty of those. But the vast majority of African American people living in this country don't come from affluent backgrounds, which means they don't live in affluent neighborhoods, which means they don't go to superior public schools, which means they don't get very good educations, which means they aren't given the same opportunities to go to stellar universities and colleges, to start careers and get good jobs and to make money, to make sure that they don't continue the cycle in their progeny. So we're kind of stuck in this circular system of the poor staying poor and the rich staying rich and no one moving. Knowledge is power, and education should not be a virtue. It should be free and equal for all. Everybody should be entitled to education, to good education. And that's what our public school system is for. But when our public school systems are being shut down by lack of funding because we don't live in an affluent neighborhood, then we're not getting the liberties and the opportunities that are supposed to be afforded to all. We're getting the second class treatment. And like I said, you can go on and on about the history of why we are this way. Slavery, and then Jim Crow laws, and then redlining, and you know, it's not like we just woke up and we were here one day. This is a built thing. We've been getting to this for a long time, but I don't want to get stuck here. I already see the problem, and I think we need to fix it. And I'm not 100% on how to fix it, but I know the first step is addressing the problem, and this is me addressing the problem. There's a problem in our public school system. There's a problem in our system in general. We live in a system that continues to oppress people of darker complexion based on the history of a system that oppressed people of a darker complexion. We have to do something different. We have to do something better. We have to move forward. And education is the beginning, because knowledge is power, and when you know better, you do better.
It's crazy. Like, I don't know what the problem is, but whatever. Alright, so I'm like originally from North Philly, but I currently live in Southwest. I'm a senior at Martin Luther King High School. And that's in, where is that? I don't know where my school is. It's in, like, it's not North Philly, it's more like, it's closer to Mount Airy, like, it's what people consider uptown. So, King is in, like, uptown, and there's, like, a lot of different kids from, like, all different kinds of places. And it takes me so long to get there. Like, from Southwest, I have to wake up around, like, if you want to get there on time, which is 7:30, I have to wake up around, like, 5:30 in the morning. So I usually don't get there on time. But I'm only there for, like, a quarter hour credit maybe, so I ended up like spending a lot of time. I ended up like transferring from online school. There was like a period in my life where I just I'm not gonna say like I wasn't interested in like school anymore, but like with everything that was going on around me, school just kind of like took the back burner. So going to like the online school, it was like beneficial at first, and then it started being like increasingly difficult. So I just stopped doing that. And you know, I don't want to make it seem like homeschool is like a bad thing, because they did all they could to help me. It just like at that time I don't know if I was like fully prepared to be helped. So I ended up like actually graduating from there and like, you know, getting my diploma and everything. And when I went to go apply to colleges, like they let me know like that I didn't have all my credits like from high school. So it was like either I take remedial courses or, you know, I go back and get the credits from high school. So I didn't want to pay for remedial courses, so I just went back to high school. So in middle school, I went to Young Scholars Charter School. It's like a charter school that started in there. Before that, I went to like the local public school. I went to like Duckery Elementary, and my mom did a lot of research, and she like found Young Scholars, and she was like so excited about it. She was like, "We're gonna go to Young Scholars, and so many opportunities you're gonna come from it." And like, I just thought like a charter school was gonna be so hard, and like they're gonna ask for too much, because like I can't. My background is in public education, so you know, transferring to something like that was completely foreign to me. I didn't know like what to expect. So, and like my first year at Young Scholars, I was like, whatever. I just came. Like I've always been like I don't want to say like talented student, but I've always been like smart for the most part. Smart is relative though. I'll get to that, but I feel like for the most part, I've always been like smart and able to do the work, and part of that is because my mom pushed me so hard. Like she pushed me so hard to do well. I feel like a lot of them thought that had she worked harder in school, or had she been like afforded different opportunities, that her life would have turned out differently. And that's not to say that she's unhappy with where she is. She just feels like things would have like went a lot smoother for her. So with that being said, she always felt like that if she pushed us to do well, and if she pushed us to, you know, go after a lot of the opportunities that she didn't have, that, you know, things would turn out differently for us. And one of those opportunities was Young Scholars. So she found that school, and I went there, and you know, I did well. Like my 6th grade year I did well, 7th grade year I did well, and then 8th grade year was the year that I really started exceeding, because that's when I started to become more like comfortable with who I was, not only as a person but as a student.
I was having a conversation with a friend one day, and he said that he felt like every teenager in America knew how to speak 2 languages. One that you use in a professional setting when you're at school or applying to jobs and things like that, and then one that you use to talk to your friends and your family and your community and things like that. And I thought that that idea was so interesting and so integral to who I am and what my experience has been the last 8 to 10 years of my life. Because going to private school, I really do feel like I learned how to speak 2 languages. I learned how to speak private school, and then I know how to speak inner city. And it was important that I learned how to speak these 2 different dialects, because when I was at school, I didn't want to feel like I was too black, that I was too ghetto because of the ebonics that I use or the different idioms and expressions that other people couldn't understand. But I didn't want to go home and feel like I was too white for my friends to think that I spoke too proper or that I was trying to be something I wasn't. So I had to learn how to speak differently and depending on where I was. And it was so important because language is very important to culture. And once you learn how to speak a language, that's a sign that you've immersed yourself in that culture. So it's nice to think that I know how to navigate through both worlds that I walk in just through language. That I've learned enough about the culture and that I've spent enough time in each place that I know what to say and when to say it and how to say it. So in a sense, I do speak 2 different languages, or the same language but 2 different dialects of a language, or however you want to call it. But the idea is very important. The idea that I do walk in 2 different worlds. I do.
Well, initially, I actually really didn't want to go to private school. When I found out that I was going to private school for high school, I cried for like 2 weeks. I was really upset, but my mom insisted that I go because it was better than the high school that I was, zoned for, which was a higher graduating rate than my public school that I was zoned for, but because she said it was a better opportunity. And now when I look back on it, going to college like I am now, and but then again, I think I might have been a little happier had I been there, because I knew people and people knew me from middle school, and the private school that I went to, the private school that I go to, most of the girls know each other and they've known each other for a really long time. Like almost half of my class has been with each other since kindergarten. I don't really know the girls so well, so that's difficult. It's always difficult when you go into a new place and everyone knows each other.
To me, it's like the civil rights movement when we integrated schools, because white schools had better resources and better textbooks and facilities and things like that. And we just wanted what was given to everybody else. We just wanted the same opportunities. I feel like that's why it takes me 2 hours to get to school in the morning, because I just want equal opportunity. But it's sad that I have to take that 2-hour trip, because there should be a school like my school in the community that I grew up in for people who look like me to be able to get the same opportunities. It's really sad to think that had I gone to a school where I grew up, I would not be on the same track that I am today, going to a top university and, helping unfold my life as I don't want to generalize. The girls at my school have more in common with each other than they have in common with me. The same way I have more in common with people who I grew up with in my community than I have in common with the girls that I go to school with. And school is such an important part of development and growing up that it should be solely on academics and not too much about the social aspect of it. And when you go to school in a different community, so much of it is the social aspect, because it's how you are acting and how you are presenting yourself to other people. People who don't understand your culture, people who don't understand the things you're into and things like that. So I feel like so much of my school education was 2-hour trip to school, making myself socially relevant and socially acceptable, and then education. It's just a lot to take on. It's a whole lot to have to chew every morning, a whole lot to think about at 5:30 in the morning when you're waking up, and on the 2-hour trip to school, like getting yourself mentally prepared for the world you're about to step into.
Like, people talk really loudly, and I'm used to it, and it's comfortable. When it's quiet, you know that something's wrong. So after something happens with the cops or something like that, it gets quiet, and you know something's wrong. Like, it's not how it's supposed to be. But at school, you have to talk quietly, and if you're loud, it's not, normal, and it's, not it's frowned upon. So in the hallways, like a lot of people who come from places like where I come from, we like to greet each other like, hey, what's up, yo, like loud. And we've been told to not do that because it's a little bit aggressive, but that's just how we communicate with each other. And I think that we should be allowed to do that. I think we should be allowed to do things like that because, you know, the world isn't like the main line. The world is so much bigger and so much broader than that. And just because it's different, just because something's different doesn't mean that it's wrong. Just because I dap my friends instead of like, hey girl, what's up, doesn't mean that, you know, it's wrong. It's so crazy how there's like these cultural differences, and you know, who's to say which one is right and which one is wrong? It depends on the environment you're in. I'm not really used to seeing so many people who don't look like me, and I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm not pretty because the standard of beauty is so different than what I am, you know? A lot of times on the main line, pretty is, you know, long, straight, luscious hair and like very thin, like under 115 pounds. Like, you know, where I come from, the standard of beauty is a lot different than that. Like you have to have curves galore. It's okay to be brown. Like, you know, I feel like out here the competition is just not necessarily competition, but I'm not saying that boys validate me, but we're teenagers, and in a way, if no boys like you because of the color of your skin, like people don't even look past the color of my skin. They're like, oh, she's brown, I'm not even gonna give her a second look, you know? I don't know, that's difficult. Feeling like I look so different than everyone else, so I must be ugly, you know?
From cultural identity to the way you physically look, being at a predominantly white school is not always the most comfortable option. However, private school is made out to be the most beneficial option. It is seen as the holy grail of education for underprivileged students, the golden ticket out of the hood.
Public school is like really set up as that thing that we always want to get away from, you know? Like there's always somebody like trying to upsell us to something different, or like trying to advertise something better. It's always like, hey, you go to public school now and you're getting this, but if you go to private school, you can get something like this. Like, so it's always, public school is always that thing that you want to get away from, and I feel like that's something that's really messed up with the system, because, you know, public school should be that thing, like if I go to public school and I do well, I still should be confident in, like, you know, being successful in my future. It shouldn't be like if I go to a public school now and I do well, this will be good enough for me to transfer to a private school where I can go to college.
Like the goal is to get out of public school.
Yeah, I was in 9th grade. We had this, we had a world history class, and like whatever. His dad, he was trying to get like an idea of what we knew and what we didn't know and what he wanted, you know, to teach us and accomplish, you know, before the year was over. And he gave us this map of like the world, and like all the countries were like outlined and stuff. And he was like, you know, fill in as many as possible.
I still have problems with that. Okay. I've never been out of the country. I have no clue where anything is.
Like, when I tell you I was sitting there for 20 minutes, like, down way, and half my map was blank, and I was like, okay, cool. So we started going around, and he was like, you know, somebody put a country up. So I'm like, all right, let me get this out the way, raise my hand down, and fill in one of the countries that I know, so somebody don't like try to take it, and I'll be like real upset. So I got up, I did Egypt, and he was like, good job. It was like a sarcastic good job.
Of course.
Where I'm from, if you don't know, just say you don't know, and you know, hopefully like someone will teach you something, and it'll usually end up being a learning experience. So I'm thinking, you know, North Philly helped me my entire life. Why turn my back on it now? So I told him, like, I honestly don't know, like, you know, any other like countries to put on the map. And he was like, not even Italy? And this girl turned around and she was like, that's the easiest one. And like, I've never felt like so small in my whole life. And I was like, and the girl,
that was demeaning.
When she turned around and she was like, it's the easiest one, I was like, and that's fine. I still don't know it. Are you going to teach me or not? And she got up and was like, it's this one, the one that she...
I think it's very easy for people my age to lose their sense of social responsibility. When you're 18 and you're just living life, it's hard to think that things that are going on in the world apply to you, or that there's a lot that you can do to help make a change. And I think we get easily wrapped up in the idea of
being helpless teenagers. But I feel like people better than they can speak for themselves. So I think that their poems and their spoken word speaks volumes to what they're trying to say and to what I'm trying to say. Once in a while, someone says a poem that kind of shakes the foundation of what you think to be true in the world you live in. So going there, to me, not necessarily changed the way I looked at my world, but opened my eyes to the reality of what life is for people who look like me, my age, where I come from.
We talk about test scores. One kid wrote how they've taken sports out of schools and that's why kids are dropping out. Any way you think that kids are dropping out, the chance to win a $5,000 scholarship, I think we got a pretty good chance. If we get a whole lot of people from Philly to apply, I think we got a darn good chance of getting a couple winners. $5,000 is being judged by Rosario Dawson and Russell Simmons. So no matter what, your poem will be read by Russell Simmons and Rosario Dawson. Yes, so everybody in this room needs to apply. I want at least 5 kids, 5 poets from each Slam League team to apply. And you don't want to rush hard. You don't want to rush it. $5,000 scholarship and a free trip.
FDR said, "There is nothing to fear but fear itself, but if you lived in my America, you think something elsewhere. The usual gun rage is more of a gun plague, and I live where neighborhood crimes never make the front page. And they go off everyday killings because it's less paramount. I guess robberies and middle-class citizens just don't amount to the things that are influential. I guess racial hate crimes aren't that essential to why America is so hypocritical. In my America, we're more interested in what celebrities are doing. Big booty pictures of Kim K take up the whole page while schools getting shut down in the fine print. Explain to me the type of America that we are living in, where we let Beyonce's lifestyle reflect our own in. Now we drink watermelon, and we're up all night, drunk in love. They're studying to take us above to a higher level. When my ancestors slaved, they slaved to get me to a higher level. But my America is messed up and all disorganized. And the place is jacked up as this is hard to have national pride. And my America is not a melting pot, it's a soup full of lies with a tablespoon of hypocrisy and a cup full of false pride. If this is supposed to be one nation under God, why do we still manage to put on this facade? Full of big smiles and happy faces, but half of the country is still racist. Let's get back to basics. For the land of the free and the home of the brave, but how could we ever truly be free of things like police brutality still have us in shackles and chains? What a shame. And my America is a big landfill that puts us Americans to shame. And my America, little people make no difference in. Big men in suits make the difference. And my America, ethnicity is the only difference. We are slowly falling victim. We are slaves to the system. 50 stars with 13 straps full of BS. Propaganda posters posted on top of old posters of the American dream, but the American dream only seems to be 50 nightmares that replay over and over again. In my America, there are no bright stars. There are only helicopter lights soaring over dim neighborhoods, out looking for criminals or innocent black men who are only out spending their last dime in their pocket. They had to feed their families. One of the richest countries on earth, but we still have famines. People are starving. Why is it so? Why is it so that we are so quick to feed people that live on the other half of the globe, but we can't even help out the people that sleep on the front doors now? Are you telling me this was their American dream? Is this nothing to be afraid of? A plummeted education system? Are you telling me this is nothing to be afraid of? Are you telling me this is nothing to be afraid of? My America is supposed to be one as a whole, so why don't we care about the little people that make up this whole? Along with chivalry, our bravery is blowing in the wind. Maybe that big bad wolf that blew down those houses was our government, but this is Philly. And it's full of brick houses, built up of cement-filled dreams that's too tough for a big bad wolf like America to blow down. Woo!
Free little boy, is Boozy free? Hey, yeah. Lock him up and free him again, know what I'm saying? Free my homie, they got the fingerprints though. No.
So I was walking to the train station and from school, and like a group of these teenage boys that were Caucasian called me the N-word, and it was I felt so angry because there was nothing I could do about it. There was nothing I could do about it at the time. They were in a car, they drove by, and there was nothing I could do about it. You can't do anything about that. What do you do? What can you do? Think about it. Like, that's so frustrating. And people ask me, people are like, oh, she's so bitter, she's so resentful. But if you have a lifetime full of things that happen to you, you're gonna be a little bit bitter. You're gonna be a little bit angry. I know it's wrong. I know I need to let it go. But that's not the first time something like that has happened to me. It just makes me so frustrated. How could they do stuff like that?
I feel like everybody wants us to say something like really scripted, you know. And I feel like if you say anything that's like too true, people are like, "Oh God,
that's offensive." Yeah.
I think what people like, what no one wants to admit is that we all have different truths.
Yeah.
And I feel like if your truth doesn't mirror what someone else's truth is,
then they say it's offensive and they say it's wrong. Yeah, that's
they really don't recognize the fact that this kind of stuff does, like, you know, affect us because it's never affected them. When you're the majority,
and they've never seen it.
Exactly, and when you've been the majority your entire life, and someone starts come around talking about like minority
and
issues,
injustices,
how would they ever understand that because they've never been in that position? And I feel like that's what makes the private school experience so complicated. Not because like these are smart individuals, but what I feel like most of them lack is like real common sense.
Street smarts in a way.
But living in the inner city, and then going to school in the suburbs, I never felt like I was in a position to be privileged. I had seen mansions, and I had seen Lexuses every day, and people's houses who had pools bigger than my entire first floor. So I didn't think that I could be considered privileged until I went to PYPM and I heard the poems from young adults talk about their struggles of being black in Philadelphia and the public school system and all those things. And I remember there was one girl who was telling a poem about how she felt like she wanted to stand up against the public school system, and she even went as far as saying that she was willing to do sit-ins in the public schools and the neighboring communities like Lower Merion and stuff like that, because she wanted people to understand that she was serious about her education and that she wanted to take matters into her own hands because no one seemed to be listening to the youth voice. And I was so moved by this young woman's poem that I was brought to tears, and everyone around me had started to stand up because her poem was talking about standing up, literally stand up if you want to make a difference. And I was immobile. I couldn't stand up because I do want to make a difference between me and this young woman and me and any Philadelphia public school child, is the fact that I've been blessed with the gift of education, an amazing education. And it's sad to think that my life is on a completely different track just because someone believed in my potential versus the thousands and hundreds of other kids who people sweep under the carpet because of where they're zoned to live in. That bothers me. It bothers me a lot because I didn't ask to be black and I didn't ask to go to private school. I don't know. So I didn't feel like she was attacking me. I didn't feel personally victimized. I felt blessed. I felt privileged. I felt like there was a reason that I am where I am because I didn't have to be here. I didn't have to go to Baldwin. I didn't have to get into Emory. I didn't have to be given these opportunities, but I am being given them. And my social responsibility tells me that I'm supposed to use these things to give back to my community. The only thing...
So I started to do like really well in 8th grade. Like that's when I started to focus more, you know, like really push myself to do all the things that everyone else seemed to think that I could. And specifically in like my English classes, like my teacher, Miss Gwen, I feel like she was one of the first people to really like believe that I could be a writer. I always felt like I wanted to be a writer, but I wanted to be everything. Like I wanted to be an astronaut, I wanted to be the president, like I wanted to be a bunch of stuff. So she felt like, I told her that like, I really wanted to be a writer, and she like believed in me. But she was one of those like, real like happy-go-lucky, like jolly kind of white girls. And she was like, I felt like she could believe anybody would do anything. So when I said I wanted to be a writer, she was like, yeah, you should totally do it, I believe in you. And I'm like, a part of me didn't know if she like really believed in me or like if she was just saying that because like that was who she was as a person. But I realized that she actually did believe that I could do it. Like when she didn't necessarily give people easier routes, but she would always challenge me to like go further. So she would say, for one person may, write a certain kind of sentence and she'll be like, that's good. But for me, she'll always be like, no, you know that you can do better than that, and you know that you can push yourself harder than that. And a part of me really hated Miss Gwen. Like, it wasn't necessarily hate, but I kind of resented her for always thinking I could do so well, because at times I wasn't as confident. So, like, we clashed sometimes, but at the end of it, like, she was always there, to like push me to do better. And what came out of that is like a confidence across all of my classes. Like, I started to really believe that I actually could do well. People always told me like, you have potential to do this and potential to do that and blah blah blah. But once you actually start to see the results, then you start to believe yourself that you could do it. So I think with Ms. Gwen and that whole scenario, she really made me want to. I was in 8th grade. That's when I started to really recognize my potential as a writer, and I guess my teacher really recognized that potential as well, because for 8th grade graduation, they gave me this book, The Elements of Style by William Strunk and E.B. White. So it's the 50th anniversary edition, and it reads, upon the recommendation of the faculty, Young Scholars Charter School hereby grants the Certificate of Excellence to Kevin Abbott for outstanding performance, dedication, and passion in the discipline of language arts, awarded on June 24th, 2009. And that was the day I graduated from 8th grade. When I read it, it's kind of like, oh, okay. I kind of feel really accomplished, because this was one of the first experiences, getting this book and winning this English award. It was one of the first times where I thought I could actually be a writer. And for me, that didn't just mean I could actually put some words on a paper, but that meant that people would actually listen to me.
For no one to want to be you. That's, unless you're black, you don't understand how it feels for no one to want to be you. We're portrayed so terribly all over the world. No one wants to associate with us. Even people whose skin is black and they come from Africa and they have, they're of African descent. They don't want to be black because of, the stereotype that's portrayed in the media. And I just feel like my biggest goal is to kind of change the way that black people are presented. I think that's my biggest goal, and I think right now I'm realizing it. I never realized that before, but African American people, black people as a whole, do so many great things, and we're still being presented as these thugs and people who are doing terrible things, when that's really not the case. It's a small percentage of us. So ever since I was little, I've been filled with this passion for my people. I have this allegiance to my people. I want to help them. I'm very, very pro-black, and just because I'm pro-black does not mean that I'm anti-white. It just means that I really want to help my people, and sometimes I might get a little bit frustrated with the society and the government that appears to hold my people back.
Though Kevin, Marlana, and myself have had some rough experiences, we know that it is our responsibility to keep moving forward so that we can help work towards a better tomorrow. The battle we are fighting will not be won overnight, but as we prepare ourselves to step into a much bigger world next fall as we begin college, we are willing to continue fighting.
Baldwin has helped me because I've gotten to see two different sides of the world. I've gotten to see, an intellectual side of the world, and now I'm gonna go off to Howard University, and I've chosen to be around people who look like me, but they think like people at Baldwin. So it's great because I'm not gonna have to worry about not being pretty enough because of how I look or because of the color of my skin, but I still will get to be with people who are on the same intellectual wavelength as I am. I get to be around black intellectuals, and I got the intellectual section from Baldwin, and then I got the black part from my community, so I get to mix the two and pick the best of both worlds.
Kevin finished his high school classes and graduated from Martin Luther King High School this June. He will go on to study at Howard University in the fall, but in the meantime, he is continuing his love of writing and performing poetry. In July, alongside other members from the PYPM team, Kevin will be performing his poetry at the 17th Annual International Youth Poetry Slam Festival. The festival will be broadcasted on HBO as a special titled Brave New Voices. Look out for Kevin and his team. Kevin and Marlana are two examples of people like me. They are success stories in the making. But Kevin, Marlana, and myself represent only a small percentage of black youth in Philadelphia. Many young adults our age aren't in the same position that we are in. Many of the kids who look like me will not get to see college. They will see jail cells and other casualties that follow life growing up in underrepresented and malfunded urban communities. In 2009, the statistics from the U.S. Department of Justice stated that approximately 12 to 13% of the American population was African American. But African Americans make up 40% of the almost 2.1 million male inmates in jail or prison. That's already 840,000 young black men in prison. And with the closing down of many Philadelphia public schools, the numbers are climbing. So as I make the 2-hour trip to school every day, I think not only of myself, but also of every young black member of society. I think about my brother and my nephews and what it means for them to grow up as black men in America. I think about my classmates and those younger than myself. And I remember that it is my duty to make a life for myself so that I can give back to my community. I feel it is my responsibility to follow in the footsteps of those who have paved the way for me today. People like Huey P. Newton, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Maya Angelou, Gandhi, Harry Belafonte, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Dr. Cornel West, President Obama, my mother, and any other person who has ever stood up to fight against injustice to help make the world a better place. Even after college, my career, and my own family, I will never forget where I came from or how I got here, and I will never lose focus of what needs to be done.
I believe in heaven more than hell, blessings more than jail. In the ghetto, letting love prevail. With a story to tell, my eyes see the glory and well, the world waiting for me to yell. I have a dream.